There comes a time in every generation when comfort and convenience must give way to caution and clarity. If you're in your 50s, 60s, or even your 70s, you've likely seen more than your share of turbulent times. But the world we live in today carries a kind of tension that's different, quieter perhaps, but more dangerous because of it. We're not just talking about storms or economic downturns anymore. We're talking about entire systems, power grids, supply chains, even governments showing signs of strain that cannot be ignored. Recently, the European Union, representing over 450 million people, advised every citizen to prepare for at least 3 days without access to food or water. Not because of a single storm or a passing crisis, but because of real concerns about war, cyber attacks, and massive disruptions in global logistics. If that doesn't give you pause, it should. You might be thinking this kind of warning doesn't apply to you. You live in a peaceful neighborhood, have a few canned goods tucked away, maybe even a generator in the garage. But the truth is, most people, even the well-intentioned ones, are unprepared for how quickly normal can disappear. Grocery shelves don't empty gradually. They empty in hours. Gas stations run dry. Phones go dark. And suddenly, your peace of mind turns into panic. That's why this conversation matters. Not to scare you, not to sell you something, but to start with a simple question. What would you feed your family if everything around you stopped working for a week? What would you feed yourself? Emergency food preparation isn't about hoarding. It's not about building bunkers or giving in to fear. It's about thinking ahead the way our parents and grandparents used to. Back when cellars were stocked and winters were expected, it's about recognizing that the systems we depend on are not infallible and that the responsibility for resilience belongs to each of us. The foods I'm about to share with you are not fancy. They're not new. They've been around for generations because they work, they last, they nourish, and most importantly, they give you back the one thing you lose the moment a crisis begins: a sense of control. When you know your family won't go hungry, no matter what the headlines say or how empty the store shelves become, that peace is priceless. That confidence changes everything. You stop reacting to fear and start responding with calm. So if you've ever wondered whether you should be doing more to prepare, the answer is yes. And the good news is, it doesn't take a fortune. It doesn't require special skills. It just takes a willingness to begin. Start with rice, or beans, or 1 extra can of tuna. You don't need to do everything at once, but you do need to start. Because if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that the world can change fast. And when it does, those who prepared quietly will be the ones who weather the storm with dignity. Now, let's talk about the 6 foods that every household should consider having on hand, foods that last, that nourish, and that could make all the difference when things get tough. When people think about survival food, they often imagine freeze-dried meals, protein bars, or canned goods lined up in a storm shelter. But there's one item, often overlooked, that may be the single most important staple in your emergency pantry: white rice. Simple, humble, and easy to dismiss. But white rice, when stored correctly, becomes something remarkable. It becomes security. It becomes energy. It becomes the backbone of a survival strategy that works not just for days, but for decades. Let's go back to a moment in recent history that reveals a deep truth about human nature in crisis. When Hurricane Katrina tore through New Orleans, people flooded into stores trying to grab what they could. And what disappeared first? It wasn't organic quinoa or gluten-free crackers. It was plain white rice, the kind your grandmother cooked, the kind you grew up eating when times were tight. Why rice? Because rice feeds people, not for a meal, for generations. A single 20-pound bag can stretch for hundreds of servings. It fills you up, keeps you going, and works with just about anything you've got left in your kitchen. But its true strength lies in its longevity. When stored properly, and I mean really properly, White rice can last 30 years or more. Yes, you read that right. 30 years. That's not a typo. That's your children's future, sitting quietly on a shelf, waiting to serve when needed most. But here's the mistake most people make. They buy a bag of rice from the store, toss it in the pantry, and call it a day. That bag, if you look closely, is full of tiny perforations. Small holes meant for ventilation during shipping. Those holes let in moisture. They let in bugs. They let in disaster. I learned this the hard way when I opened a bag I thought was fine, only to find it swarming with beetles. That was a wake-up call I never forgot. Storing rice for the long term isn't complicated, but it does require intention. First, get food-grade buckets, the kind with tight-fitting lids. Add oxygen absorbers, which you can buy online for just a few dollars. These little packets remove the oxygen that allows mold, insects, and bacteria to thrive. Then pour in your rice, seal the lid tight, and place those buckets in a cool, dry place. Not in the garage, not next to your water heater. Somewhere stable, somewhere quiet, somewhere you won't forget. Done right, this setup turns a basic food item into a fortress of nutrition. A single bucket could feed your entire family for a week. And in times of chaos, when grocery stores are empty and delivery trucks have stopped rolling, that bucket becomes more valuable than gold. But white rice isn't just about survival. In today's economy, where grocery prices rise every month, rice is also a smart financial move. Buying in bulk can stretch your food budget dramatically. A 20-pound sack of rice costs a fraction of what you'd spend on packaged meals, snacks, or frozen dinners. And with the right seasoning or protein on top, it becomes a meal your whole family can enjoy, not just tolerate. From a health perspective, rice provides clean-burning energy, complex carbohydrates that fuel your body without spikes and crashes. It's gentle on the stomach, ideal for all ages, and blends seamlessly into every culture's cooking traditions. Whether you're making stir-fry, curry, jambalaya, or just plain rice and beans, the options are endless. Let's not forget the emotional comfort it brings. In times of uncertainty, familiar foods become lifelines. The smell of rice cooking can remind someone of childhood, of home, of safety. That matters more than we realize. Because in the midst of crisis, when stress levels are high and the world feels unstable, one warm bowl of rice can offer more than calories. It can offer calm. So here's the truth. White rice may not look like much. It doesn't have fancy packaging or trendy labels. But in the world of preparedness, it stands as one of the most powerful, reliable, and affordable tools you can own. Not for panic, not for show, but for peace, for readiness, for the quiet assurance that when others scramble, you'll be steady. Start now. Buy one extra bag. Learn how to store it the right way. And know that with every grain, you're not just preparing food, you're preparing for freedom from fear. In times of uncertainty, people often race for the obvious bottled water, canned soup, maybe some batteries and flashlights. But there's a quiet hero that most overlook until it's too late. A food so powerful, so versatile, and so deeply woven into the history of human survival that it deserves a central place in every pantry: dried beans and legumes. Let me take you back to the early days of the Ukraine conflict in 2022. I was glued to prepper forums, watching reports roll in from people on the ground. Grocery stores were stripped bare within hours. Bread was gone. Pasta vanished. Bottled water disappeared. But do you know what people fought over most? Protein. Meat, eggs, dairy, all gone. That's when it hit me. In a crisis, it's not the carbs that vanish first, it's the protein. Because protein is life. It sustains muscle, supports immunity, and keeps your body going when stress and fear are draining your energy. And here's where beans step into the spotlight. 1 cup of black beans packs about 15 grams of complete protein. That's the same as a full chicken breast, but with none of the refrigeration requirements or spoilage risks. Properly stored, dried beans can last for 30 years or more. Yes, 30. They don't need electricity. They don't need fancy packaging. They just need a dark, dry space and a little foresight. But there's more. Beans aren't just protein. They're a nutritional powerhouse. Iron to support healthy blood. Fiber to keep your digestive system moving. Potassium for heart health. Folate for brain function. Vitamins and minerals that your body craves, especially during stressful times when nutrient deficiencies creep in quietly and dangerously. Too often, people think beans are difficult to prepare. They imagine long soak times, hours of cooking, the need for a full kitchen. But real-world crises have proven otherwise. During the Texas freeze of 2021, when millions lost power, savvy preppers found ways to prepare beans without stoves or electricity. Some sprouted their beans simply soaking them in water and letting nature do the work. In just a few days, those beans became crunchy, nutrient-rich sprouts, ready to eat raw. No fire, no tools, just water and patience. Others used thermos cooking, a method that's been around for generations. Soak your beans in advance, then pour boiling water over them into a thermos. Wrap it in towels or blankets, let it sit overnight, and by morning, you've got soft, ready-to-eat beans. This isn't just smart, it's survival science. Let's talk cost for a moment. A 20-pound bag of mixed dried beans, black pinto navy lentils, can cost under $40. That's hundreds of servings of high-quality protein for less than a dinner at a mid-range restaurant. Meanwhile, most people are panic buying steaks and cold cuts that rot in 3 days without power. You'll be eating clean, nutritious food while others are throwing out spoiled meat and hoping the lights come back on. And it's not just about storing food. It's about storing peace of mind. Beans are shelf-stable. They don't go bad if the freezer dies or the fridge fails. They don't need rotation every year. Stored in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and placed in sealed buckets, they'll last longer than most mortgages. I know people who've opened beans stored 25 years ago, and they still cooked up perfectly. There's also a psychological value to consider. In tough times, when the world feels unpredictable, the simple act of cooking a pot of beans brings normalcy. The smell fills your home with warmth. The taste reminds you that nourishment is still possible, that you are not powerless. But perhaps the most powerful truth about beans is this: they give you options. Beans pair with rice, pasta, vegetables, spices. You can mash them, stew them, bake them, sprout them. They can be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. They can be comfort food or survival fuel. And when you need to stretch your meals, they do it beautifully. Beans are more than food. They're a legacy. They're what fed empires and explorers, soldiers and settlers. They're what your grandparents relied on when the money ran out, or the snow trapped them indoors. And today, in a world of digital convenience and instant gratification, beans are a reminder of what real resilience looks like. So if you haven't started stockpiling beans, let this be the week you do. Start small, 1 bag. Learn to cook them, sprout them, store them. Because in the storm that may come, whether next month or next decade, you'll be thankful for the quiet strength sitting in your pantry, ready to rise when you need it most. Imagine this. The power has been out for 5 days. Your refrigerator is silent. The meat you bought last week, those organic steaks and grass-fed chicken breasts, they're no longer food, they're biohazards. The smell alone makes you wince every time you open the door. You try to salvage what you can, but by now, it's too late. The food is spoiled, the stores are closed, and delivery apps have stopped working. But in the back of your pantry, you find a can. Chicken, pork, tuna. You open it, and just like that, you have a meal. Safe, ready, and nourishing. Canned meats don't get the attention they deserve. People turn their noses up at them, associating them with camping trips or wartime rations. But in truth, These humble cans may be the most reliable source of protein during any emergency. They don't need refrigeration. They're pre-cooked. They're sealed against contamination. And they're shelf-stable for years, sometimes even decades. I once met a man who had eaten a can of ham that had been sitting in his basement since the 1990s. He was still around to tell the story. And while I don't recommend ignoring expiration dates, the truth is, those Best Buy labels are more about quality than safety. As long as the can isn't dented, bulging, or rusted, what's inside is often perfectly edible. During a crisis, protein is gold. It repairs muscle, supports your immune system, and keeps your mind sharp when stress is weighing heavy. And canned meat delivers. We're talking 20 to 25 grams of protein per serving, the equivalent of a grilled chicken breast, without the grill, without the fridge, and without the worry. In the middle of a blackout or a supply chain breakdown, that can of tuna or chicken becomes more than just food. It becomes fuel, real fuel. Fuel your body recognizes and uses efficiently. Let's talk about convenience. In an emergency, you may not have access to a stove, oven, or even a proper knife. That's why I always recommend looking for canned meats with pull tabs. You don't want to be fumbling with a manual can opener in the dark, while your hands are shaking from cold or fear. Pull tab cans open with ease, even if your only tool is desperation. Now, if you want to go a step further, consider vacuum-sealed pouches. These aren't your typical canned goods, but they carry many of the same benefits with added portability. They weigh less. They're easier to pack if you need to evacuate. And in a pinch, you can tear them open without any tools at all. They don't last as long as traditional cans, maybe 6 months to a year, but for short-term emergencies or bug-out bags, they're a game changer. One word of caution. If you're including canned fish in your emergency stash, pay attention to mercury levels. Not all tuna is created equal. Brands like Safe Catch Elite test every fish for mercury and are safe enough for pregnant women and children. During a disaster, the last thing you need is an added health risk from something meant to nourish you. Make smart choices now, and you'll thank yourself later. But beyond nutrition and shelf life, there's something else canned meats offer that's often overlooked: variety. The human palate isn't designed to eat the same bland meal every day. In fact, monotony can become a real problem in long-term crises. That's why stocking a range of options matters. Chicken, beef, pork, salmon, sardines, even canned bacon. Yes, it exists. And yes, it tastes surprisingly good. This variety helps maintain morale. When everything outside feels unfamiliar and threatening, familiar flavors can provide comfort, grounding, and a sense of control. And here's one more tip most people never think about: storage location. Heat is the enemy of canned food. A hot garage or attic can shorten the shelf life dramatically. Keep your cans in a cool, dark place. A basement, if it stays dry. A closet. Even under your bed. Anywhere stable and away from temperature swings. This one detail could be the difference between a safe meal and spoiled waste. Canned meats aren't glamorous. They don't fit the image of gourmet living. But when the lights go out, when the trucks stop rolling, when the neighbors are standing in long lines for emergency rations, those little cans become a beacon of sanity. They offer sustenance. They offer simplicity. They offer one less thing to worry about when everything else feels uncertain. So don't wait. Add a few cans to your next shopping trip. Look for quality. Choose variety. Store them wisely. Because one day, you may reach for a can and realize that it's not just food. It's survival sealed, secure, and waiting for the moment it matters most. Let's pause for a moment and talk about something that seems almost magical. Not in the mythical sense, but in the way it defies time, resists decay, and quietly holds answers from the ancient world. I'm talking about honey. Real honey. The kind that never spoils, never breaks down, and never fails to offer both nourishment and healing. It might be the most underestimated emergency food you could ever own. Picture this. In 1922, archaeologist Howard Carter opened the tomb of King Tutankhamun. Inside were treasures beyond imagination: gold, jewels, artifacts, untouched for over 3,000 years. But among them, something even more astonishing: jars of honey, still sealed, still golden, still edible. 3,000 years, and it hadn't gone bad. That's not just impressive, that's evidence. Honey isn't just a sweetener, it's a survivor, and it's not just one ancient anomaly. In 2012, scientists discovered 5,000-year-old honey in the country of Georgia. Still good, still rich with flavor, still capable of doing what modern processed sugars can't nourish and heal. But why is this important to you? Because in a crisis, your food must do more than fill you up. It has to last. It has to support your body. And it has to offer comfort when everything else feels like it's unraveling. Honey checks all those boxes. Nutritionally, honey provides quick, clean energy. 100 grams gives you over 300 calories, and not just empty ones. The unique combination of glucose and fructose in honey is absorbed more evenly than processed sugars. That means sustained energy, instead of sugar crashes. And in an emergency, when you're doing more physical work than usual, when your stress is higher, when sleep is short and nerves are frayed, that kind of energy is essential. But honey's power goes far beyond calories. It's a natural antibiotic. Raw honey contains hydrogen peroxide, yes, the same compound you might use to clean a wound. Ancient Egyptians knew this and used honey in 30% of their medical treatments. They weren't guessing. They were observing. And what they saw, modern science has confirmed. Honey inhibits bacterial growth. It helps heal wounds. It soothes sore throats. It calms coughing. The World Health Organization even endorses honey as a legitimate remedy for upper respiratory issues. That's not folklore. That's medicine. Think about that for a moment. In an emergency, when pharmacies are closed, when doctors are unreachable, when you or a loved one is dealing with a cough, a burn, or a minor infection, honey is your first aid kit in a jar. Now, let's talk shelf life. While canned goods may give you 3 to 5 years, and dry pasta maybe 10 to 20, honey has no expiration date. None. As long as it's sealed and kept free of moisture, honey will outlast your great-grandchildren. It's self-preserving. Its low moisture content and acidity create a hostile environment for bacteria and mold. Bees even add special enzymes to the nectar they collect, breaking it down into sugars and creating conditions where nothing harmful can grow. That's not coincidence. That's nature engineering perfection. In fact, honey's potential as a barter item in hard times is enormous. Imagine this: the power's out for a week, stores are empty, supplies are tight, and you've got jars of something sweet, healthy, and nearly immortal. People will trade for that. People will remember who has it. In a world where supply chains falter, honey becomes more than food. It becomes currency. But let's not overlook the emotional impact. In difficult times, small comforts carry enormous weight. A spoonful of honey in a cup of hot water. A drizzle over a piece of bread. That sweetness does more than satisfy a craving. It soothes the spirit. It reminds us of normalcy, of care, of the small things that still work when so much else doesn't. So how should you store honey? Simply, keep it in a glass jar or a sealed plastic container. Keep it away from direct sunlight and extreme temperatures. That's it. No oxygen absorbers, no special bags, no rotating stock every year. It just sits there, waiting, unchanged, undiminished. And here's something else to keep in mind. Not all honey is created equal. The raw, unfiltered varieties hold the most medicinal value. Processed honeys often strip out the very enzymes and antibacterial compounds that make honey so special. So when you shop, look for raw, look for local, look for the kind that still crystallizes in the jar, a sign that it hasn't been boiled or tampered with. In the end, honey is more than food. It's a legacy, a link between ancient survival and modern wisdom, a tool that offers calories, comfort, healing, and hope. And it doesn't ask much. No electricity, no preparation, just respect. Add it to your pantry. Not just because it's smart, not just because it's effective, but because in a world of uncertainty, having something so pure, so stable, and so quietly powerful, well, that's the kind of advantage every household deserves. When we talk about emergency food, most minds go straight to the practical. Long shelf life, easy storage, high calories. But there's one element that often gets overlooked: emotional nourishment. In times of fear and disruption, we don't just eat to survive, we eat to remember what comfort feels like. And that's where pasta steps in, humble, filling, familiar, and more powerful than most people realize. Think about it. You've lost power. It's cold. You're running on little sleep, rationing supplies, and trying to keep everyone calm. Then you boil some water and stir in a handful of spaghetti. Suddenly, your kitchen smells like childhood, like Sunday night dinners, like everything is going to be okay. That bowl of pasta isn't just a meal, it's a memory. And in that moment, it may be more valuable than anything in your emergency stash. Pasta has been around for centuries because it works. It's inexpensive, shelf-stable, and feeds a crowd. 1 pound can stretch to feed 4 or 5 people when paired with even the simplest of sauces. And it doesn't spoil easily. Stored properly, dry pasta can last 25 years or more. Yes, you read that right. That box of penne in your pantry might outlive your mortgage. And unlike many other survival foods, it still tastes good when it does. The reason pasta lasts so long is simple. It's dry, very dry. Without moisture, bacteria and mold have no chance to grow. As long as the packaging is intact and the environment is cool and stable, pasta will sit there quietly waiting to serve. You can store it in its original packaging, or for extra security, transfer it to Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers and seal it in buckets. That takes a little work, but the reward is decades of ready-to-cook nourishment. Let's talk about nutrition. Pasta is not just empty carbohydrates. It's a source of complex carbs that burn slowly, providing steady energy. When you're under stress, doing more physical labor, or trying to manage without modern conveniences, that energy matters. It sustains your muscles, supports your focus, and helps regulate your mood. Even more important, pasta is versatile. You can make soup, stir-fry, casseroles, cold salads, add beans, canned meat, or a few vegetables, and suddenly you've got a full, satisfying meal. And because it's so familiar, everyone eats it: kids, adults, even picky eaters. In a situation where you need to keep morale high and avoid food fights, that kind of universal appeal is priceless. Pasta also cooks quickly. In an emergency, you might have limited fuel, maybe just a camping stove or a small fire. Pasta doesn't demand much. Boil water, cook for 10 minutes, and you're done. No soaking, no waiting. Just a warm plate of calories and comfort. That's more than food. That's a break from chaos. From a financial standpoint, pasta is one of the best investments you can make. $1 or $2 buys a pound. A single trip to the store could fill a bin with enough meals to last weeks. Compare that to freeze-dried foods or survival rations, and the difference is stark. With pasta, you're not just preparing for disaster. You're protecting your grocery budget today. And there's a hidden benefit most people never consider. Pasta is community food. It brings people together. One pot, shared around a table, even if the lights are off and the news is grim, reminds us of connection. That shared experience, that feeling of, we're in this together, is just as vital as any calorie count. Because when people eat together, they talk, they support each other, they plan, they hope. Of course, there are a few simple rules to get the most from your pasta. Store it in a dry, cool place. Avoid temperature swings. Don't let it sit in sunlight. And if you're storing long-term, keep it sealed tight to avoid pests and moisture. Check your stash once a year. Rotate if needed. But know that even if you forget it for a while, it'll likely be just fine when you finally reach for it. So, the next time you're at the store, grab a little extra. Stock up on spaghetti, macaroni, shells, penne, whatever your family likes best. Not because you expect disaster, but because you understand that food isn't just fuel. It's reassurance, it's dignity. It's that moment when you sit down with loved ones and say, "We're okay." In the end, pasta isn't just about feeding the body. It's about feeding the spirit. And in times of crisis, that might be the most important nourishment of all. When most people think of survival food, they imagine things that are bland, unfamiliar, or even unappetizing. But sometimes, the most powerful tools are the ones we've had all along hiding in plain sight, quietly waiting in our pantry. Pasta is one of those tools. Simple, affordable, beloved across cultures and generations, yet vastly underestimated when it comes to emergency preparedness. Let's begin with a truth that's as practical as it is profound. People need comfort. Not just calories, not just protein. In times of fear and disruption, when routines are shattered and the news offers no solace, a warm bowl of something familiar can feel like a hug. Pasta is that comfort. It's the meal you grew up with, the dish you shared with family, the food that reminds you, if only for a moment, that everything might be okay. But pasta is more than just nostalgia. It's one of the most stable, versatile, and cost-effective staples you can own. Unopened dry pasta, stored in a cool, dry place, lasts easily for 2 years past its best-by date, and that's just according to government guidelines. In reality, with proper storage, think airtight containers, mylar bags, and oxygen absorbers, pasta can remain safe and tasty for 10, 15, even 20 years. What makes pasta so resilient? The answer lies in its composition. Dry pasta contains almost no moisture, and without moisture, bacteria and mold simply can't grow. It's like nature has already done the preservation work for you. All you have to do is keep it protected. But the real power of pasta goes beyond shelf life. It's in the flexibility. One ingredient, countless possibilities. Spaghetti with sauce, macaroni and cheese, pasta salad, chicken noodle soup, tuna casserole. With just a few additional ingredients, canned meats, dried herbs, powdered cheese, you can create meals that feel homemade, even when the world outside is anything but. And pasta isn't just filler. It provides complex carbohydrates, which are crucial during stressful times. These carbs break down slowly, offering sustained energy that helps you stay focused and active without the crash that comes from processed sugar. In a crisis, when your body is operating on adrenaline, fear, and physical exertion, you need fuel that lasts. Pasta delivers. Now, let's talk about cost. You can still walk into most grocery stores and buy a pound of pasta for around $1 or $2. That's pennies per serving. Compare that to freeze-dried meals at $8 or $10 each. Pasta allows you to stretch your budget while building a robust, reliable food reserve. And the best part? It doesn't feel like a compromise. It feels like dinner. Cooking pasta during a power outage is easier than you might think. All you need is boiling water and a heat source, a camp stove, a can of sterno, even a small fire. Pasta cooks in 10 minutes or less, meaning you can conserve both fuel and time. And if you're working with limited water, it's one of the most efficient ingredients you can use. But there's more. Pasta has a unique psychological advantage that few other survival foods offer. It brings people together. In a disaster, you're not going to be eating alone. You'll be feeding your spouse, your children, maybe even your neighbors. Pasta is communal. It's familiar to almost everyone. Children love it. Seniors can eat it. And nobody needs a recipe to enjoy it. I've heard stories of people surviving hurricanes, ice storms, even wildfires, and when they talk about what helped most, it's not just generators or sandbags. It's the moment they could sit down and eat a hot meal with someone they cared about. A bowl of pasta may not solve a crisis, but it can anchor you, calm you, remind you of what matters. That's what makes it powerful. Not just its calories or shelf life, but the way it fits into the rhythm of real life. The way it keeps you connected to routines and rituals that remind you who you are, even when everything around you feels strange. So here's the invitation: don't overlook pasta. Stock up, store it properly, learn how to cook it with minimal equipment, and pair it with other long-lasting ingredients like beans, canned meats, or tomato powder. You'll be amazed at how many meals you can create. Meals that nourish not just your body, but your spirit. In the end, pasta is more than a pantry item. It's a strategy. It's a bridge between normal life and emergency readiness. And when the lights go out and the world feels uncertain, that simple box of spaghetti might be the most comforting thing you own. A few years ago, I used to roll my eyes at freeze-dried meals. I thought they were overpriced, overhyped, and meant only for doomsday preppers or campers with fancy gear. But then, something happened. A winter storm rolled through Texas. Power lines snapped. Roads froze. Grocery stores shut down. And a friend of mine, Mike, who had laughed at prepping just like I did, found himself sitting in a cold house, eating a warm, hearty meal beef burgundy, of all things from a pouch. No stove, no microwave, just hot water and a plan. That's when I realized something had changed. Freeze-dried meals aren't just for the paranoid. They're for the prepared. And if you're serious about protecting your family from future uncertainty, they deserve a place in your pantry and your strategy. What makes freeze-dried food so remarkable is its shelf life. We're talking 30 years. Think about that. If you had stocked up in 1995, your meals would still be edible today. That's longer than most marriages, longer than the lifespan of your fridge, longer than the internet has been mainstream. These meals outlast almost everything. The process is what makes them special. Freeze-drying removes moisture without destroying flavor or nutrients. It's not dehydration, it's preservation at the molecular level. What you get is food that looks a bit odd when dry, but springs back to life with water. The taste? Surprisingly good. The quality? Better than you'd expect. And the convenience? Unmatched. Let's say the power is out. No stove, no microwave. You don't even have hot water. Most freeze-dried meals can still be prepared with cold water. They'll just take a little longer to rehydrate. That means even in the worst-case scenario, you can still have something that tastes like real food. Not mystery rations, not bland mush. Real food with flavor, texture, and enough calories to keep you going. And here's the kicker. You don't need to be a chef. You don't need recipes. You don't need pans. Tear open the pouch, pour in water, wait, and eat. That's it. No cleanup. No prep, no stress. When your brain is already overloaded with survival decisions, that kind of simplicity matters. Now, let's talk nutrition. Freeze-dried meals are designed to provide a balanced plate: protein, carbs, fats, and essential nutrients. Some are high in sodium, yes, but others are carefully crafted for long-term use. Brands like Mountain House and ReadyWise have meals designed by real chefs. Chicken and dumplings, teriyaki beef, pasta primavera, even breakfast options like scrambled eggs with bacon. There are vegetarian And gluten-free choices, too. And some companies have gone a step further, offering desserts, yes. You can even find freeze-dried apple cobbler and chocolate pudding. This variety serves more than the palate. It serves your morale. In long emergencies, food fatigue is real. Eating the same thing day after day wears on the spirit. Variety helps preserve normalcy, especially for children or seniors who may struggle with emotional resilience. A meal that feels familiar, that tastes like a meal instead of a chore, becomes a source of comfort and stability. Let's not forget storage. These meals come in pouches or buckets that are puncture-resistant, moisture-proof, and compact. A week's supply for a family of 4 can fit under a bed or in a closet. You don't need a bunker. You just need a little space and the decision to be ready. Once stored, they require no maintenance, no rotation schedules, no worrying about expiration dates every 6 months. Yes, freeze-dried meals are more expensive up front. $8 to $12 per meal might seem steep, but let's do the math. That meal often feeds 2 adults, sometimes 3 with added rice or crackers. So you're looking at $4 to $6 per person for a hot, complete meal that lasts 3 decades. Compare that to takeout or a frozen dinner that spoils. If the power goes out suddenly, it's not so expensive after all. And here's something no one talks about: dignity. When everything else is falling apart, when the house is cold and the future feels uncertain, sitting down to a warm meal that tastes like real life is a powerful thing. It tells your family, we're okay, we planned for this. That moment of reassurance is priceless. So, should you stock your entire basement with freeze-dried meals? Probably not. But should you have a week's worth? Maybe 2? Absolutely. Emergencies don't wait for payday. They don't care if you're ready. But when you are, when you've taken the time to prepare, what could have been a disaster becomes just another hard day. One that you'll get through with grace, warmth, and a full belly. By now, you've seen how each of these 6 foods, rice, beans, canned meats, honey, pasta, and freeze-dried meals, can form the backbone of a powerful emergency food supply. But before we close this chapter, there's one more conversation we need to have. A conversation about mistakes. Not the kind that cause inconvenience, the kind that ruin everything when it matters most. You see, I've been through enough storms and shutdowns to know this truth: having food isn't the same as being prepared. It's not just about what you store, it's about how you store it, where you keep it, whether you remember it exists when the lights go out, and whether it's still good when you finally reach for it. Let's start with storage, the most overlooked part of emergency planning. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people spend hundreds of dollars on food, only to throw it all away later. Why? Because they stored it in the garage, next to the lawnmower, under the attic eaves, or worse, right on a damp basement floor. Heat and moisture are the silent killers of food stability. A summer heat wave can turn a 5-year shelf life into 5 months. A tiny leak can destroy everything in a single day. One friend of mine stored his rice, pasta, and cans in cardboard boxes stacked in a basement. A few months later, a slow pipe leak soaked the bottom boxes. He didn't notice until mold had eaten through the labels, rust had crept across the cans, and his emergency stash had turned into compost. All that effort gone. That's why I say this with urgency. Store your food like it matters. Because it does. Keep it in your living space, where temperatures are stable. Use plastic bins, buckets with gamma lids, sealed shelves. Label everything. And for the love of everything you've prepared for, keep it off the ground. Next up, rotation. You'd be shocked how many people stockpile and then forget. Years pass. Expiration dates come and go. And when the emergency hits, they find out their stash has quietly expired. Don't be that person. Instead, build a simple system. Every month, maybe on the first Sunday, take 10 minutes to check your supplies. Look at dates. Pull anything approaching its limit and plan to eat it this week. Then replace it. No stress, no waste. Just smart, steady upkeep. I call this the Sunday check system. It's not fancy. You don't need an app, just a notepad and the will to protect what you've built. If you want to get fancy, make a spreadsheet. Track item, quantity, purchase date, and expiration. Tape it inside your pantry door. Update it when you add or use something. It's not just organization, it's insurance. Now let's talk about quantity. The European Union recently recommended that every citizen prepare 72 hours worth of food and water. That's 3 days, 3 meals a day. Sounds reasonable, right? But here's the problem. Real disasters don't resolve in 72 hours. They get worse. Power doesn't return in 3 days. Roads stay closed. Shelves stay empty. And if your plan stops at day 3, your trouble is only just beginning. Look at recent history. During Hurricane Ida, some neighborhoods were without power for over 2 weeks. During the Texas freeze, people burned furniture to stay warm. During the pandemic, supply chains broke down for months. If you only have food for 3 days, you'll be standing in line with everyone else by day 4, cold, hungry, and scared. That's why I urge you to build a minimum 2-week buffer. Better yet, aim for a month. Not all at once, not in panic, but gradually, 1 week at a time. 1 extra can, 1 extra bag, 1 thoughtful choice. And here's the most important mistake to avoid panic buying. We saw it during the pandemic. Toilet paper, bottled water, freezers full of food that's spoiled. Panic creates chaos. Chaos helps no one. Preparation, on the other hand, is calm, strategic, gradual. Buy what you already eat. Store what you already love. Build slowly, and you'll avoid waste. Start with 1 food this week. Just 1. Maybe it's rice, maybe it's tuna, maybe it's honey from your local farmer's market. Make that purchase part of your routine. Over time, your pantry will grow, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. And when the next storm hits, whether it's a snowstorm, a blackout, a political crisis, or something no one saw coming, you won't be the one scrambling. You'll be calm, ready, able to help others. And that peace of mind? That's worth more than any meal. So here's your invitation, not just to prepare, but to live more consciously, to stop relying on fragile systems and start building strength from the inside out. Because preparedness isn't just about food. It's about taking responsibility for yourself and your loved ones. It's about freedom, independence, and the quiet confidence of knowing that whatever comes next, you've got this.